phrase you said that struck me is that you're taking cases of constitutional gravity, of constitutional import. And I think that leads to a question, something that's been a topic related to the courts for most of my lifetime, certainly, and that is the concept of judicial philosophy. You know, how a judge rules based on what they believe the law is or should be, perhaps. Could you tell us a little bit about what you think in the way of judicial philosophy and what direction you think that we should be thinking about as regards that?
To me, the question about judicial philosophy is really narrowed down to one of two families. You either believe in judicial restraint or you believe in judicial activism.
Mm-hmm.
But there is not a commingling of the two. Judicial activism says, I am going to decide this case based on where I think the law should be or go, or outcome derivative. You're picking a winner and a loser. I don't believe that.
Mm-hmm.
I believe my role is significantly limited in order to be a part of a tripartite system of governance. In order for the republic to live,
Mm-hmm.
you need to be mindful of the restraints of your powers. As I read a constitutional provision or a statute, it's the same thing as if I read a contract. I am reading for the intent of the General Assembly or the framers,
Right.
using only the words that they use.
Mm-hmm.
And if they gave us definitions, then we use those definitions, and if they don't, and they're undefined, and they do not have ordinary meaning, you take out a dictionary and you define what that means. Sometimes, because it has acquired a legal significance, you might take out Black's Law Dictionary, but universally we take out a third world dictionary
Well, sure.
and actually use that definition. I don't get to erase words, add words, or create an outcome. And this is why it becomes so important. If you believe in our republic, and that our voice, and we have representative government, what would you have if I erase your voice because I get a third vote? Because I happen to don on a black robe for my work,
Mm-hmm.
nothing gives me a third voice to say, I don't like that law.
Yeah.
I am going to meddle with it. We really wouldn't have anything. We would destabilize the law, in my view.
Mm-hmm.
We would also create a situation where you wouldn't know what to do. So if you're a lawyer practicing law in Putnam County and the judge is making it up as they go along,
Mm-hmm.
how could you ever advise a client what the law is and how it will be applied?
Right. And I think in many ways, and certainly I think on behalf of the conservatives that live in Northwest Ohio, in thinking about that, is that's exactly what we want a judge to do. Read what the law is, tell us what the law is, and follow that law. Because we have a General Assembly to change the law.
Correct.
As necessary. And obviously if they err or if the administration errs and violates the law, then your role is to make sure that that doesn't happen. So that's very encouraging to hear. Of course, we know that about you because
Thank
you're
you.
on our ballot, and we've been delighted to have you on our ballot as well. But I think the one additional thing in relationship to that is that it keeps governance closer to the people.
And that's
in the
where it
first
should
place.
be.
Right, exactly.
If we write a decision as a majority and say, based on the words of the statute, this means X. If the General Assembly really didn't intend X, they have the ability to pick it up again and fix it.
Mhm.
And we have seen that as we have decided cases to say, this is what the law is. They've taken it back under advisement. They have fixed the law in the manner that they have shaped
Mhm.
through committee work, through conversation, through votes of majority in the House and then again in the Senate as signed by a governor.
Right.
But it cannot work in the reverse. As the founders, if you think about it, when they were giving birth to this nation, how did they talk to the people? How did they talk to the colonists in order to explain why this constitutional supremacy form of government was so important and why it should work or how it would work? They wrote the Federalist Papers. Federalist Paper 78 begins the conversation of what the role of the judiciary would be. The people feared the judicial system. Unelected individuals appointed for life, what kind of power would they have to strip the people's voice away, to take their representative voice away? And what was written by Alexander Hamilton in that document in Federalist Paper 78 is we would never have force nor will. We don't have power of the standing armies or power over the taxation purse. All we will have is reason and judgment based on the words of the law that they have given us,
Right.
and nothing more.
That's wonderful. And that's exactly, I think, what we should all be in favor of. And obviously, not all of us have been in the past, which is why we have elections. And that's a little bit of a segue to kind of the last thing I wanted to ask you about. By virtue of being closer to the people, judges in Ohio are on the ballot, as opposed to the federal judiciary, which is by and large appointed and serves for life. You're on the ballot this year, and that's one of the reasons why we were glad to have the opportunity to come and talk with you and to introduce you to the people of Putnam County in Northwest Ohio and more. And we've seen you at a lot of events. The hardest working candidate I think we've ever seen. I think Tom Liebrecht behind the camera will agree. But this gives
Thank
us
you.
an opportunity to talk more about that. So by consequence of that, it's important for us, I think, to express to our voters, if you believe in the kind of judicial restraint, interpretation of the law based on what the Constitution says, that the General Assembly, the legislature generally speaking, is in charge of making the law, then it's important for our voters to know that they need to vote for the kind of candidate who believes in the same thing. And in the case of your race this year, that's you and not your opponent. So it's, as it turns out, that's the critical part of what we're talking about today. And I think why it's so important for us to let people know more. We are delighted to have the opportunity not only to meet with you, to see this magnificent building, this true gem of a courthouse here in Columbus, but to give this opportunity to introduce you to our voters. And we'll look forward to talking with you again this year when we get a little bit closer to election time, encouraging folks to make sure that they turn out and that they're voting for you as opposed to their opponent. The one disadvantage of the ballot structure in Ohio currently is that we don't know who's the Republican, who's the Democrat, who's the other party on our ballot. So we are not going to miss the fact that it's Justice Kennedy this year when it comes to that line. Justice, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you so much.
We greatly appreciate this opportunity, and we'll look forward to seeing you again later this year. So,
Thank you.
all right.
And to all of you at home watching, thank you. This is your building. This is your Supreme Court of Ohio, and I invite all of you here to take a tour and see its beauty for yourself. Travel to Ohio, get off the highways and byways, and come see us here in downtown Columbus.
That's one last thing to add. Your Facebook feed, your social media presence, it's remarkable. It's wonderful. If you're not following Justice Kennedy already, I would strongly encourage you to do so. I've learned more about the back roads of Ohio from you than I have from any history book. It's absolutely
Well,
phenomenal.
thank you for that. I love my covered bridges, and it's a
That's-
place of history. I think everyone should enjoy Ohio and get to see what I see as I travel. I truly believe it's part of my mission in social education of going out and speaking to civic organizations in high schools or junior highs and making sure that the people see what there is to see in their own great state, the state of Ohio.
Exactly right. Thanks again. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. So
Thank
thank
you.
you. We'll see you next time.